The flashing red and white lights nearly blinded me as I jumped out of bed. Outside it looked like a SWAT raid. Black trucks with HOA enforcement painted on the sides were lined up in front of our property like tanks. Flashlights cut through the darkness. People in dark uniforms stood shoulder to shoulder like soldiers, shouting through megaphones. "You have 5 minutes to leave the property or be removed by force," one yelled. My heart pounded. My wife, Maggie, clutched our sleeping daughter, tears running down her face. "Tom, what is going on?" "They said we had 90 days. We did. We had written proof. But the HOA didn't care. They were evicting us at midnight." And as I looked through the blinds and saw a neighbor recording on her phone while sipping hot cocoa, I realized this was no mistake. This was a message. They wanted us gone. And they were using the darkness to do it quietly. But they didn't know one thing. I used to train people like them. I used to lead tactical missions. And they were standing on my property. I slowly opened my closet door, pushed aside a suit jacket, and unlocked a hidden safe behind the wall. They were expecting a frightened family. They were not expecting a tactical response. Cut to black. My name is Tom Foster, 42 years old. I'm a retired tactical instructor. Served 2 tours overseas. Came home to build a quiet life in southern Colorado with my wife, Maggie, and our 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Last year, I bought a peaceful 10-acre ranch outside of the city. Clean land, no prior issues, not even inside HOA lines. At least that's what I thought. A month after moving in, I received the first notice. It said, "Welcome to Black Canyon Estates. As a property owner, you are subject to all HOA bylaws. Please ensure you register your household within 30 days. I double-checked. My realtor confirmed, "You are not part of the HOA." So I ignored it. I thought it was an error. A misprint. Then came the second notice. "You are in violation of Article 7. Unapproved livestock and exterior structures. You have 14 days to comply or face fines." I called the number. A woman named Karen Jenkins, president of the Black Canyon HOA, picked up. She sounded polite but firm. "Oh, Mr. Foster, it's a common misunderstanding," she said. "We've recently expanded our enforcement zone. We now cover your area. It's all in the annex documents." "Ma'am," I said, "you can't just expand into private land." She laughed. "Well, that's what you think." That was our first call. But not the last. At first it was small things. A drone hovering over our backyard while Lily played. A fine taped to our mailbox for having a tire swing. A mysterious man parked across the road taking photos. I went to the sheriff. He said, "They've done this before. Technically, if you're not part of the HOA, they can't enforce anything. But they can make life hard. Just watch your back." Maggie and I agreed to ignore them. We had moved to the country for peace, not drama. But the HOA didn't want peace. 3 weeks later, I caught someone cutting our fence in the middle of the night. I rushed out with a flashlight and camera. It was a man in a neon vest with a clipboard. "Who are you?" I asked. "Property inspection," he said. "Black Canyon HOA. You're not permitted barbed wire fences. It intimidates the neighborhood. We're not part of your HOA. Not officially. But practically, you are. We're asserting coverage." I escorted him out, forcefully. And the next morning, we received an eviction warning. But this time it didn't come by mail. It was hand-delivered. By Karen herself. She showed up in a black Range Rover wearing a fur coat and sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. 2 men stood behind her like bodyguards. "Mr. Foster," she said, smiling. "You're squatting on protected land. You have 90 days to vacate or face enforcement." I held the paper in my hand and said, "Try it." She leaned close. "I will." I called 3 lawyers. Every one of them said the same thing. "This is nonsense, but they've loopholed the zoning." Apparently, when the neighborhood was expanded years ago, the city signed off on a vague clause. No one noticed until now. Karen did. And she was using it to choke out anyone who didn't comply. My lawyer said we could fight it, but it could take years. Meanwhile, the HOA could fine us, harass us, send private security, and make it unbearable. Or, he said, you could sell and walk away. But that land was my family's future. I wasn't walking away. I contacted 2 people I hadn't spoken to in years. Travis, a retired Marine turned security consultant. Elena, a cyber defense expert who now ran a private firm. I told them everything. Travis asked, "You sure this isn't just a grumpy HOA?" I sent him the photos, the threats, the documents. He whistled. "Tom, this isn't an HOA. This is a takeover." We made a plan. A quiet one. Because if they were planning to show up, so were we. 2 weeks passed. Things got tense. The HOA installed a camera pole on the border of our land. Someone dropped nails at the entrance of our driveway. Even our water was shut off for 24 hours. Karen claimed it was a neighborhood plumbing issue. Then it came. A red paper nailed to our front gate. You are hereby ordered to vacate this property on or before 11:59 p.m., under emergency authority granted by Black Canyon HOA. Emergency authority? From who? The sheriff refused to intervene. It's a civil matter, he said. I looked at Maggie. We stay. She nodded. We stay. The night was cold. Lily had fallen asleep in Maggie's arms. I was sitting in the living room, shotgun across my knees. Then, headlights. Dozens of them. Trucks. Uniforms. Dogs barking. Loudspeakers screaming. This is HOA enforcement. This is your final warning. I turned to Maggie. Go to the safe room. But. Now. She ran with Lily to the back of the house. I stood, heart pounding, and walked to the hallway closet. Moved the coats aside. Pushed the panel in. The biometric lock clicked. Inside, my old vest. My headset. Non-lethal tactical gear. Not to kill. Just to stop. To protect. I stepped outside alone. Karen's SUV headlights flashed on. She stepped out, holding a bullhorn. Time's up, Mr. Foster. But I already had backup. Because Elena had tapped their radio frequencies. Travis had secured the perimeter. And every inch of my land was wired, watched, and protected. I raised my megaphone and said loud and clear, "Stand down or I'll treat." Karen blinked. Then pointed forward and screamed, "Move in. Move in." That was Karen's command. At least 10 men in black tactical-style uniforms started marching toward my front porch like it was a battlefield. They had flashlights, batons, and something worse, bolt cutters and sledgehammers. One shouted, "We're breaching the door." But they didn't know. My porch was no ordinary porch. I had prepared for this. The moment their boots hit the first step, a high-pitched screech came from hidden speakers under the wood slats. It was a frequency used to disorient enemy patrols. Not loud to neighbors, but sharp and unbearable up close. The HOA men paused, covering their ears. Then came the flash. A wall of white strobe lights erupted from the roof, timed and triggered from inside the house. Karen screamed, "What is this? Who authorized this?" That was just the beginning. Because from behind the barn, Travis emerged, dressed in full tan tactical gear, GoPro strapped to his helmet, and holding a modified drone controller. Overhead, a drone buzzed into the air, armed with cameras, lights, and speakers. Through it, Travis boomed, "This property is not under HOA jurisdiction. Disperse immediately or face trespassing charges. All of this is being live-streamed. Is like an invasion." The crowd froze. Some of them looked scared. A few tried backing away. But Karen was shaking with rage. "He's not allowed to do this. He's a trespasser." She had no idea. She had just stepped into my playbook. The moment we got the red notice, I started building a map. Not just of my land, but of everything Karen had done. Elena, my cyber expert friend, hacked into HOA communications using public backdoor vulnerabilities. What we found. Karen had built her own special enforcement committee, a private team of men who were not licensed officers, not trained, and certainly not legal. They were HOA members' husbands, cousins, and a few hired muscle types from local security firms. She called them Black Canyon Command. It was illegal. But it was also quietly terrifying. She even had a document called Operation Midnight Compliance. That's right. She had planned the nighttime eviction for weeks. And she picked Friday night, because most county offices would be closed until Monday. But she didn't count on two things. Me being ready for her kind of war. My tactical map, covering every access point, motion sensor, drone patrol route, and safe zone. We even rerouted our entire security system to upload everything live to the cloud. I wasn't just defending. I was documenting. Earlier that evening, I had one last conversation with Maggie. "I don't want Lily seeing any of this," she whispered. "She won't," I promised. "You'll both stay in the panic room." It was a small underground bunker built when we moved in, stocked with water, food, and a radio. Maggie hugged me, shaking. "I trust you. Just don't become him again." She meant the old me. The man I was during the tours. A man trained to remove threats with precision. I nodded. "I'm not going on the offensive. I'm just making sure they don't cross the line." I kissed Lily's head as she slept. And when the lights outside began to gather, I whispered, "Showtime." Back in real time, Karen's troops had regrouped. They were shouting into radios, trying to locate the power supply to my security system. One of them found the breaker box near the barn and reached for it. That's when Travis activated the decoy protocol. A small pop echoed, nothing explosive, just a blinding smoke flare. The guard dropped to his knees, coughing. From the roof I triggered another defense. Fake sprinkler spray, filled with vegetable oil and colored dye. Not harmful, but impossible to wash off quickly. Bright green and yellow slime covered their uniforms. Karen shrieked, "You'll pay for this." But even now she has started stepping back now. The drone overhead captured everything. We had 5 feeds running. And on the live stream's corner, a flashing message read, "Live streaming to local news tip line and legal archive." That was the moment when Elena sent a mass email to every HOA member and news reporter in the county. Black Canyon HOA has illegally launched a tactical-style eviction against a private citizen. Live footage confirms potential violations of state and federal laws. More details inside. Karen's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her face went pale. But even backed into a corner, Karen was Karen. She pointed to one of her enforcers. "Grab the daughter. We'll see how brave he is then." My blood went ice cold. They didn't know where Lily was, but it meant they were willing to cross a sacred line. I activated hard lock. Every gate is sealed. Panic room auto-locked. Then I switched to loudspeaker mode. "You come from my family and this becomes a federal issue. Walk away now or we go next level." That's when Travis stepped into view, helmet light beaming. He said calmly, "Karen Jenkins, you are now on camera ordering men to harm a child. That's attempted abduction. That's prison time." She froze. Then she screamed, "Get in the house." 3 of her men ran toward the back door, trying to flank. But they didn't see the tripwire Travis placed an hour earlier. It didn't explode. It simply dropped a weighted net from the tree above. 2 of the men got tangled, falling hard. One yelled, "I can't see." The third turned to run, right into Travis, who calmly zip-tied his hands and said, "You picked the wrong hobby, buddy." Inside the command center, aka my living room, I spoke into the microphone again. "Karen, you have 3 seconds to call this off. Or I file for felony invasion, child endangerment, and impersonating an officer." She looked around. Half her team was on the ground. The rest were covered in oil and dye. Drones buzzed overhead. Emails were pouring in. Even a neighbor across the field was recording from his porch, laughing. "You're done." Karen screamed. "This isn't over." I stepped out of the shadows, full vest on, boots crunching gravel. "No, Karen," I said. "It's just beginning." And right then, Sheriff Mason's car pulled up. Blue and red lights washed across the scene. Karen's eyes widened. Someone had called the sheriff. But she didn't know who. The sheriff didn't even get out of the car at first. But a deputy stepped out. She walked straight to Karen. "Karen Jenkins, step aside. You need to come with me." "What?" Karen looked around. "He's the trespasser." The deputy held up a folder. "Ma'am, we have security footage, a live stream, and over 30 community complaints about illegal enforcement actions. You need to come down to the station." Karen's voice cracked. He's making all this up." "I don't think so," the deputy said. "And I think your little midnight army just crossed a line." I stepped forward slowly, watching the rest of her goons freeze in place. And then I heard something that made my stomach twist. The deputy leaned in and whispered to me, "Sir, we just learned that Karen wasn't working alone. There's someone higher. Someone is funding this HOA power play." I stared at her. "Who?" She looked over her shoulder and said, "Your neighbor. The one across the hill." The deputy's words echoed in my mind. "Your neighbor. The one across the hill. He's the one funding this operation." I turned toward the distant house beyond the trees. Big white columns. Gated driveway. An American flag that never moved. Frank Millstone. He was quiet, always waving politely from a distance. The kind of neighbor who wore suits to check his mailbox. We thought he was just a retired CO. Never had a problem with him. Until now. I whispered, "Frank's behind the HOA attack?" The deputy nodded. "Not just behind it. He's paying for it. He built this special enforcement committee. He handpicked the guys. Karen was just the mouthpiece." My hands clenched into fists. So that's why Karen thought she was invincible. She wasn't the general. She was the puppet. And Frank? Frank had just made this personal. Because he was planning something even bigger. The deputy leaned closer. We have reason to believe Frank's trying to buy out the entire ridge. Your land is the only one in his way. I took a moment. Let that sink in. Then I whispered back. He won't get it. 2 years ago, Frank moved in quietly. His mansion sat just past the HOA boundary, but he pulled all the strings. He was once a defense contractor, owned land, airstrips, and even tech firms. But he retired early and decided to build his own peaceful community. Only it wasn't peaceful. It was controlled. He bought off the HOA, funded a neighborhood security budget, helped volunteer enforcers get new gear, even donated to the sheriff's re-election campaign, though Sheriff Mason never gave in to his demands. Frank believed he could turn our hill into a private resort. Rumor had it he wanted to level the properties and build a golf course, conference center, and exclusive retirement retreat. All he needed was my ranch, and I had refused to sell. 6 months ago he offered $2.3 million. I told him I wasn't interested. He smiled. You'll change your mind eventually, he said. Now I understood what he meant. Back at the house, the sheriff finally stepped out of his car. But instead of arresting Karen or shutting down the raid, he sighed and walked slowly toward me. Tom, he said, I've been getting calls all night. I need this to settle down. She ordered an attack on my home, Sheriff, I replied. With uniforms, tools, and threats. He looked exhausted. I know. But she's claiming HOA emergency powers. I pointed toward the drone feed. And I have it all on tape. Plus, your deputy just told me Frank Millstone is pulling the strings. Sheriff Mason hesitated. That name hit him. You can't touch him, can you? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead he said, Don't make this worse, Tom. You've got a family. I stared at him, fire in my gut. She came from my family. Frank sent her. This is war. The next morning I drove up the winding road to Frank's mansion. Travis wanted to come. So did Elena. But I went alone. I needed him to see me face to face. Frank answered the door himself. Dressed in a cream sweater, sipping coffee like it was Sunday brunch. Well, he said calmly. Tom, how's your fence holding up? Don't play dumb, I snapped. I know you sent Karen. I know you've been trying to take my land by force. He chuckled. Force? No. Just opportunity. You've got beautiful land, but it's underused. Think of all the jobs, the tourism, the progress I could bring to this ridge. You want me to sell so you can pave over my memories. I want you to be smart, he said. Take the money. Leave the headaches. Or, fight me and I'll drown you in legal fees, inspectors, and red tape. You'll spend years in court while your family suffers. I didn't blink. I just said, you'll regret this. He smiled. Only if you survive what's coming next. That week I was hit with 11 citations in 3 days. Unpermitted water use. Exterior lighting violation. Lawn maintenance failure. Suspicious animal activity. They even claimed my barn was zoned improperly. All fake. All coming from the HOA office, run by Karen, funded by Frank. The sheriff couldn't stop it. The county clerk was buried in paperwork. Every office I called told me the same thing. We're reviewing it, but it could take time. Time I didn't have. I called Elena and said, we need to expose him. She responded with a grin I could hear through the phone. Already working on it. Elena hacked into the HOA server again. This time she found bank wires. Karen had received payments from one of Frank's shell companies. Even better, she uncovered a private chat group between Frank, Karen, and 3 other HOA board members. It was called Clear Ridge Project. Inside were conversations like, once Foster's out, we bring in the architects. Have the HOA accidentally shut off his power for 72 hours. Make him sweat. If he pushes back, use the child safety concern angle. People always fold when their kids are involved. I read those words and felt sick. They wanted to break me using my daughter. 2 nights later, Lily woke up crying. Someone had left a dead squirrel in front of her window. Blood smeared on the glass. Maggie screamed. We checked the cameras. Nothing. Whoever it was had blind spots mapped perfectly. That meant one thing, someone inside my system. I called Elena. We've been compromised. She ran diagnostics. Frank's team had planted a remote backdoor using an old neighbor's Wi-Fi. They were watching us. I shut everything down. Changed all protocols. And then I told Maggie, I'm done reacting. She looked at me, her eyes red from crying. Then what do? I said, we turn the trap on them. Travis and I spent 2 days redesigning our property map. We marked all access points, blind spots, tree cover, wind direction, entry speeds. We planted mock equipment to lure spies. We left bait flash drives with fake plants. We even created false audio recordings for them to intercept. All of it pointed to one thing: that I was planning to sell the ranch in secret. Elena uploaded fake emails between me and a made-up foreign buyer. And then we waited. Sure enough, Karen bit the bait. A few nights later, Elena called. Tom, Karen just accessed one of the fake drives. What's she doing? She thinks you're giving in. She's organizing a final push to destroy your reputation publicly. How? Elena answered, they're going to leak proof that you're a fraud, abusing the system and selling out to foreign developers. All of it fake, but they think it'll ruin you. I grinned. Good. Let them try. That weekend, the HOA called for a public emergency meeting. Karen stood at the front, microphone in hand, Frank seated behind her. She said, Tom Foster is a danger to this community. We have evidence he is planning to sell his land to unknown entities. This could bring crime, chaos, and disorder to our neighborhood. A few members gasped. She continued, we will vote tonight to begin official removal proceedings through county petition. We need 75% of homeowners to sign off. Let's do it. And just as people started nodding, the projector behind her flickered. It switched screens, then displayed private HOA chat logs, leaked by unknown source. Target his daughter if needed. Karen J. Make his wife snap. Emotional weakness. Frank M. Gasp. Cries. Cameras up. Phones recording everything. Frank stood. Turn that off. Elena, watching from a remote link, smiled. Karen screamed. This is illegal. A woman from the crowd yelled, you threatened a child? People started chanting. Arrest them. Arrest them. Then, the sheriff walked in. He looked around. Then straight at me. Tom, he said. You're going to want to hear this. The state just stepped in. I asked, what happened? He said, Frank's house is being raided right now. Sheriff Mason's voice was calm but heavy. Frank's house is being raided right now. The entire room went silent. HOA members stared at each other. Phones were lifted. Karen's jaw hung open. Frank? Raided? The man who sat behind every HOA meeting like a king on a throne? He stood up slowly. I want my lawyer. Mason nodded. You'll get one. After we check your basement, your server room, and that private airstrip you didn't think we knew about. Karen turned to him, whispering, Frank, you said they'd never touch you. He didn't answer. Because outside the HOA hall, federal agents were pulling into the neighborhood. Frank's smug smile had vanished. But as I looked into his cold gray eyes, I knew something wasn't right. He wasn't panicking. He was calculating. Because Frank still had one card up his sleeve. And it was more dangerous than all the others. 2 days before the HOA meeting, Elena compiled everything she had. Bank transactions. Fake shell company lists. Chat logs. Recordings. We didn't just send it to the local sheriff this time. We sent it to the state attorney general. We tagged the media. We filed digital copies with watchdog groups. We made sure if anyone tried to delete or block it, the truth would still get out. And the attorney general's office responded fast. Turns out, Frank had already been under investigation for shady land acquisitions in 3 other counties. We just helped light the match. The warrant was signed within 48 hours. And now, as Frank was being questioned, his empire was crumbling in front of the people he once ruled. But it wasn't over yet. After the meeting chaos, I stepped outside to get some air. My head was spinning. Victory felt close. But something kept nagging at me. Then a tall man in a dark coat stepped out of a parked car and approached me. Tom Foster. Who's asking? He handed me a business card. Mitchell and Bryce Legal Group. Land and Asset Division. We represent a consortium interested in your property. I'm not selling, I replied sharply. He smiled. You don't have to. Not yet. But Mr. Millstone was just the face. There are others. And your land? Let's just say, it sits on something more valuable than memories. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside, satellite images, soil reports, and a letter. If you don't sell, we'll take it legally. You've already been flagged for federal review based on power usage anomalies, animal welfare concerns, and code violations. You'll be in court for years. My stomach twisted. Is this a threat? It's a promise. From people who don't lose. And just like that, he walked away. I took the documents home and showed them to Elena and Travis. What is this? I asked. Elena scanned it quickly. Tom, They're not after your ranch because of the view. Look here. She pointed at one document, a 3D soil scan. Your land sits on one of the richest untapped lithium veins in the state. My eyes widened. Lithium? As in batteries? Travis whistled. That's why Frank wanted it so bad. That's why they offered millions. Not for cattle or hay, for tech mining. And the HOA? Just the front. The HOA was the chessboard. Frank was the first piece. These new guys? They're the players. That night I found Maggie sitting on the porch. She held Lily in her lap, stroking her hair. She looked at me and whispered, "I can't do this forever." I sat beside her, silent. "I'm tired, Tom," she said. "This fight, it's taken over everything. Lily cries at night. I'm scared to check the mail. And now there's more?" I squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry. I miss peace," she said. "I miss laughing without fear. What if we just sold? Started somewhere new?" Her words cut deep, but I understood. I looked at the sky, at the land I bled to protect, and I said, "Give me one more chance. One last strike. If it doesn't work, I'll walk away with you." She nodded, wiping tears. "One more chance," she whispered. I called Elena and Travis. "We're going nuclear," I said. Not literally, but we were going to shine a light so bright on these shadowy players that they couldn't move without being seen. We called it Operation Lighthouse. Here's what we did. Created a public blog titled The HOA Warzone. We posted videos, evidence, documents, everything the public could read. Invited reporters for an on-site tour. We walked them through every fence cut, every drone photo, every flash drive. Held a livestream Q&A. Over 40,000 people joined. Reached out to lawmakers, showing how HOAs were being hijacked by private investors to force land takeovers. In just 3 days the internet exploded. #HOA tyranny. #landgrab leaks. #protect rural families. Even celebrities began tweeting. A U.S. senator called for a public hearing. We had turned their silent war into a national spotlight. The night before our big town hall rally, Travis's truck was firebombed. He wasn't in it, thank God. But his message was clear: "You're next." We knew it wasn't random. The fire marshal said it looked professional. No fingerprints. No trail. Maggie packed emergency bags that night. Even Lily asked, "Daddy, are we gonna have to run away?" I knelt beside her and said, "Not if I can help it." At the town hall the next day, hundreds gathered. Sheriff Mason was there. Reporters. HOA members. Even quiet neighbors who had never spoken up before. And then, Frank arrived. In handcuffs. He was escorted to the front by federal agents, his expensive coat now wrinkled, his perfect hair messy. The crowd parted. And I stood before him. "Was it worth it, Frank?" I asked. "Trading peace for power?" He didn't reply. But one of his old HOA allies shouted from the back. "You used US. We thought you were protecting the neighborhood." The people turned on him. And the new state rep at the podium made a declaration. "An investigation has been opened into HOA weaponization, land zoning abuse, and private equity corruption. We will defend the American family's right to peace." The crowd erupted. For the first time in months, hope returned. Later that night after the rally I received a call. Blocked number. A voice on the other end said, "You've won the town. But don't think we're done. We're not HOA. We're federal. We're private. And we don't lose." I stared at the phone. Then I walked outside and looked across my land. I wasn't just up against Karen. Not just Frank. Now I was fighting ghosts in suits. Hidden in law, money, and darkness. But I knew one thing. They'd have to drag me off this land. Because I wasn't moving. I was digging in. And if they came next time, they better bring more than clipboards. The air was still. Too still. At 4:27 a.m., before even the birds started chirping, my motion alarms buzzed. 6 matte black vans rolled down the private dirt road that led to my ranch. No license plates. No logos. Just heavily tinted windows and a dust trail behind them. I slipped on my vest and boots. In the living room, Maggie was already cradling Lily wide-eyed. "They're back," she whispered. "No," I said as I grabbed the binoculars. "These aren't the HOA. These are professionals." One van stopped just outside our gate. A man in tactical gear stepped out, calm as a surgeon. He didn't yell. He didn't announce himself. He just walked to the gate, took out a black device and pointed it at my camera system. Everything went black. My screens shut off. No signal. Elena's voice crackled in my earpiece. I picked up the radio. "Plan C. Code name, Stampede. She answered, copy that. Triggering remote uplink now. This wasn't just another bluff. They had declared war. But this time I wasn't alone. 2 days before the vans came, I got a warning. A local real estate broker messaged anonymously. They hired a ghost firm. Former military. No names, no flags. They're paid to pressure, not protect. It was Cross Solutions, a private contracting group often used by corporations to intimidate landowners during hostile takeovers. Frank's arrest didn't stop them. Because, as we learned, Frank was just the middleman. The real buyers, a mining investment group called Grey North Holdings, still wanted my land for lithium extraction. They didn't care about court orders or community outrage. They had one rule: get the land. By any means. The black vans parked in a half-circle formation around my ranch's border. 2 men approached the west fence line with bolt cutters. 2 others patrolled with handheld jammers that knocked out cellular signals. I was effectively cut off. No cell. No internet. No backup. Maggie looked pale. What do we do? I handed her a sealed envelope and said, go to the bunker. If they breach, call Sheriff Mason from the satellite line. What are you going to do? I looked out the window. I'm going to wake up the town. On the roof of my barn was an old cowboy trick. A signal tower built from metal piping and flash igniters. Travis and I installed it months ago, just in case. I climbed up, heart pounding, and flipped 3 switches. A massive red flare shot into the sky, followed by 2 piercing sirens. Not your regular alarms. These were coded distress signals, prearranged with nearby ranchers and friends. Less than 10 minutes later, engines roared in the distance. Headlights popped on through the trees. And one by one my neighbors arrived. Pickup trucks, tractors, horses, even ATVs. Not with weapons, just strength, unity, community. Over 40 people surrounded the vans. And from the road came the booming voice of Sheriff Mason through a megaphone. Stand down. You are trespassing on private property. This is your only warning. But the Cross leader wasn't moved. He stepped out, sunglasses on, helmet clipped tight. He calmly held up a folder and walked toward the sheriff. Sheriff Mason read the first page, and cursed. He looked at me and shouted, Tom, it's a federal cease and comply order. Signed by a judge in D.C. I yelled back, fake or forged? Doesn't matter. It gives them authority to inspect for environmental compliance. You block them, they file obstruction. I felt my stomach turn. This was the card Frank hinted at. A court order, issued by someone they bought. But just as they tried to cross the fence, something beautiful happened. The townspeople didn't move. Instead, they linked arms. Old ranchers, young teens, store clerks, teachers, retirees, even the mailman. They formed a human wall between my ranch and the vans. One man shouted, you'll have to go through all of us. Another yelled, this isn't just Tom's fight anymore, it's yours. Even Sheriff Mason looked stunned. The Cross men exchanged glances. They weren't used to resistance like this. Real people standing up. With nothing to lose but their land. But as tensions rose, a car slowly crept through the back road. Was Karen. Not in her Range Rover. This time she looked different. Desperate. She parked near the field and shouted across the wind, Tom, you don't know what you've done. You made enemies that don't forget. I stared at her. They'll have to add me to their list. She pulled out a USB stick. You think you've exposed everything? You've only scratched the surface. If you let me in, just me, I'll show you what Grey North has planned for the entire ridge. Everyone stared at her like she was crazy. Even the sheriff stepped forward. Karen, you're under federal review. You shouldn't even be out here. But she was serious. This wasn't a warning. Was a lifeline. While I debated letting her talk, Elena sent a message through our backup ham radio. I hacked the court order. Judge who signed it was bribed. I'm dropping the proof to state AG in 3, 2, 1. Then she sent. Also, Grey North's board is being investigated for international corruption. It just hit the news. Suddenly, one of the Cross men received a call. He answered, went pale and looked at his team. We're pulling out, he barked. What? The leader growled. We're exposed. Orders from top. Leave now. One by one the vans reversed. They drove off without another word. The townspeople cheered. Maggie ran into my arms, Lily in hers. I held them tight, heart still thumping like a drum. Karen stood alone, clutching the USB. And I knew. This wasn't over. Later that night, I sat across from Karen in the barn office. She slid the USB across the table. You win for now, she said. But Grey North doesn't quit. You'll need this. I hesitated. Why help me? She looked down. Because I finally see what they were doing, and it could ruin everyone. Not just you. They don't want your land, they want control. I plugged in the drive. On it was a document labeled, Phase 2 County Takeover Plan. It included names of politicians, planned HOA expansions, real estate developers, eviction blueprints, maps for 10 more neighborhoods across the state. This wasn't about me anymore. It was national. And the only thing stopping it was us. I stood in front of a podium. Bright studio lights glared overhead. Across from me sat 3 government officials, 2 journalists, and over 2.8 million people watching from home. This wasn't a small-town hearing anymore. This was a congressional investigation, live on national TV. I took a deep breath and said, they sent fake HOA notices. They forged eviction papers. They paid off judges, deployed private armies, and harassed families like mine, just to steal land they had no right to. I reached into my jacket, pulled out a folder, and raised the USB. This drive contains the names, payments, and blueprints of one of the biggest land takeover schemes in the country. And it started with a simple HOA letter. Gasps filled the room. One senator leaned forward. Mr. Foster, she asked, are you prepared to name names? I nodded. Every single one. The USB from Karen wasn't just a smoking gun. It was a nuclear bomb. Elena and her tech team spent days decrypting files. They uncovered 14 corrupt HOA boards, 9 politicians who took donations from Grey North, secret contracts with foreign investors tied to mining, a Phase 2 blueprint that included over 60 neighborhoods nationwide. Even worse, they had plans to evict over 1,000 families under fake HOA expansion laws. We knew we couldn't just fight this locally anymore. This was bigger than Black Canyon. So we took it to the Attorney General and the news media. And then Washington called. They asked me to testify before the Congressional Land Rights Committee. I said yes. But I didn't go alone. I wasn't just some ex-soldier turned rancher. I was now a symbol of something much bigger. And when I stepped off that plane in D.C., I was met by Travis, my friend and fellow vet, Elena holding printed charts of the entire Grey North web, Sheriff Mason in uniform ready to speak, and over a dozen neighbors from our ridge, ordinary Americans with signs, photos, and stories. We were just one community out of many, but we were the first to stand up. And we weren't backing down now. The night before I testified, we received a threat. A plain envelope slid under my hotel room door. Inside was a photo of Lily playing on the ranch. On the back were 5 words written in red ink. Speak and she disappears forever. Maggie cried. I felt rage boil up from my chest. But Travis gripped my shoulder. They're bluffing. They've lost control. That's all this is, desperation. Still I couldn't sleep. I sat up all night staring at that photo. And at 4 a.m. I made a choice. If they wanted to silence me, I would make sure my voice echoed louder than ever. The next morning I walked into the chamber. Suit and boots. Folder in hand. No fear in my eyes. They asked me to tell my story. I didn't hold back. I spoke about the midnight eviction. The fake fines. The drone spying. The oil-dyed uniforms. The armed security. And then, I played the video files. Karen's voice ordering to target the child. Frank bragging about zoning manipulation. The ghost company's van footage. Maps of proposed land seizures. The room went quiet. A senator from Texas removed her glasses and whispered, "This is bigger than we thought." Then Elena stepped up and added, "This isn't just about one man's land. This is about who owns America." Midway through the session, a surprise witness walked in. Karen Jenkins. The committee gasped. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes heavy with guilt. They swore her in. And then she said, "I was used. I was promised a board seat, a house upgrade, even stock options if I helped them push out landowners. I didn't realize they were building a machine." "Who's they?" a congressman asked. She answered with a trembling voice, "Grey North Holdings. And their partners, including 2 current federal land commissioners." Silence. Then chaos. Phones lit up. Cameras zoomed in. This was no longer just a local scandal. It was national corruption at the highest level. That night, every major network played the clips. HOA used as front for land theft. Veteran rancher exposes national plot. Small town stands up and wins. Even the president released a statement. We are opening an emergency investigation into HOA abuse, zoning corruption, and land fraud. No American family should fear being forced out by greed. Legislation was introduced the next week. The Landowner Protection Act. It banned surprise HOA expansions, required consent from property owners before jurisdiction could be claimed, and funded new protections for ranches, farms, and rural communities. Our town? We were now called the Ridge that roared. And me? I wasn't just a landowner anymore. I was a defender of land rights. Back home, Maggie stood on the porch, smiling. Lily played in the yard again, free, safe, laughing. Travis built a new barn wing. Elena bought a small house near the Ridge. Karen? She served time, but later started helping other communities fight back too. As for Frank, he was sentenced to 20 years without parole. And the ghost company? Disbanded, banned, and blacklisted. We rebuilt our ranch, stronger than before. And at the entrance we placed a sign. Private property. Not under HOA. Protected by the people. They tried to scare us, to control us, to erase us quietly. But they forgot one thing. This land isn't just dirt. It's family. It's freedom. It's home. And when you come for one of us, you wake all of us.